Hello, welcome to Time Capsules. I'm Karl Marx, Professor of History at Dickinson College. We've constructed this video series to illuminate some moments in European history. For my students, this series serves as a backdrop to our class discussions, but all viewers are welcome, and we hope that you too will enjoy unearthing the past. Several countries, the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, Vietnam, and others, claim to have communist systems derived from the ideas of Karl Marx. But who was this guy, and what did he write about? In this short tutorial, we explore some of his key critiques of capitalism. Karl Marx was born in Trier, Prussia, and died in London, England. Marx is known as the father of communism, but he was also a philosopher, economist, sociologist, and journalist. Marx was one of 9 children in a Jewish household. However, due to restrictive laws on Jewish citizens, Marx's father converted to Lutheranism so that he could continue his legal career. Karl Marx later became an atheist. At the University of Berlin, Marx studied law and philosophy and became active with a group known as the Young Hegelians, who challenged ideas such as religion, philosophy, ethics, and politics. Marx lived most of his adult life in London, where he worked occasionally as a journalist, even being a correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune. But he was never able to make a living wage to support his family. In 1843, Karl Marx married Jenny von Westphalen, daughter of a Prussian baron. An educated advocate in her own right, Jenny gave up her comfortable lifestyle and, along with her daughter Tussie, became Karl Marx's chief advocate and collaborator. Jenny deciphered Marx's illegible handwriting, prepared his manuscripts for publication, and participated in discussions of his ideas, while at the same time maintaining a household in poverty and sickness, doing her best to keep her children and husband alive and debt collectors away from their home. Tussie was a socialist advocate, translator, writer, and confidant for her father. Friedrich Engels was a business owner and Marx's friend. They met in 1843 in Paris and went on to co-write the Communist Manifesto. Engels also financed the always destitute Marx while he wrote Das Kapital. After Marx's death, Engels posthumously published volumes 2, 3, and 4. As a young journalist, Marx challenged institutions and governments, which forced him to leave Prussia, Belgium, and France before settling in London, where he remained for almost 4 decades. Some of Marx's most famous publications include the Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844, Das Kapital, and the Communist Manifesto. The Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844 are a collection of Marx's sometimes incomplete notes from that year that include his early analysis of economics, mainly through the critique of Adam Smith's economic theories and Georg Hegel's philosophy of history. Marx's multi-volume Das Kapital in 1867 criticizes capitalism as a political economy and analyzes the capitalist mode of production, commodification, exchange value, and the class struggle. The Communist Manifesto in 1848 is Marx's most well-known and accessible work. This highly readable pamphlet served as Marx's criticism of capitalism and its exploitation and dehumanization of workers. Most importantly, it is a call to an inevitable revolution of workers. It concludes with, "Let the ruling classes tremble at a communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries, unite!" Marx argued that social class is determined by one's relationship to the means of production. The machinery of the Industrial Revolution changed the means of production from land to factories. Marx organized capitalist society into 2 main classes: the bourgeoisie, who owned the means of production, and the proletariat, who worked for those who owned the means of production. The Industrial Reserve Army was the unemployed workers waiting to take the jobs of those employed. Marx's premise that all history is a history of class struggle was modeled but diverged from Hegel's dialectic. For Marx, when the mode of production changes, the class structure changes. Yet the owner of the means of production still engages in a class conflict with those who utilize the means of production, be it a serf or a factory worker. Marx posited various stages of historical development based on class conflict. If all history is class conflict, Marx suggested, then historical development was inevitable, even though one cannot predict when the changes would occur. In primitive communism, we had a hunting and gathering society. In slave society, we had slave owners and slaves. This is the stage during which classes emerge because of ownership, rather than sharing of the means of production. In feudalism, we had lords against serfs, a system in which land is the means of production. In capitalism, we had the bourgeoisie against the proletariat. Factories are the means of production in this stage. In socialism, Marx argued, we would have a dictatorship of the proletariat, serving as a transition state in which the government is not an owner, but organizes ownership. The final stage of history would be communism, where the state has withered away, and society works on the premise of from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. In the slave, feudal, and capitalist stages, there is exploitation of the haves on the have-nots. One's material conditions and relationship to the means of production create one's consciousness as part of a class. Marx developed his ideas in opposition to numerous political economists, but let's use Adam Smith as an example. Smith advocated a division of labor in the new industrial capitalism that allows workers to become specialists and improve the speed, quality, and price of the product, which benefits all of society. Smith proposed replacing craftsmen who created a product from start to finish by dividing the production into several parts, with one person specializing in a single part of the task. Because for Marx, labor and property were most important, he proposed a different notion of exchange value, kind of like barter, based on labor. Marx theorized that the value of any object is the labor time it took to produce the given object. If it takes 1 hour to create a wool sweater, then it has the value of 1 hour of labor time. A chair carved in 2 hours has the value of 2 hours of labor time. Therefore, one chair has the equivalent labor time value of 2 sweaters. The money values assigned to commodities become an abstraction of labor time, but also allowed for capitalists to further make profit off of a commodity in the labor exchange, because money hides the real value, or labor time, of commodities. Marx argued that the division of labor dehumanizes workers by alienating them from the product of production, the process of production, other workers, and even from one's species being, or true essence. Marx focused on labor because he saw labor as inherent to our human identity, that at our core we get pleasure from taking an inorganic material and creating something out of this. A craftsman toy maker enjoys all parts of his work, from designing the toy and crafting it to painting small details on it. Capitalism's division of labor in search of efficiency and profit blocks this toy maker from his essential human identity. He becomes another replaceable worker, doing the same menial task over and over. If we think of the development of capitalism from craftsman to assembly line worker to robots now taking many of those human jobs, we can more fully understand the current relevance of the alienations that Marx proposed a century and a half ago. For Marx, capitalism was a system of exploitation of workers, and wages were at the center of the problem. Adam Smith believed that a wage was determined by the type of labor one does. However, the value of jobs are all determined by employers. Marx challenged that notion. He stated, "He, the capitalist, tells us that originally and in theory the whole produce of labor belongs to the worker. But at the same time, he tells us that in actual fact, what the worker gets is the smallest and utterly indispensable part of that product, a wage. As much only as is necessary for his existence, not as a man, but as a worker, and for the propagation, not for the humanity, but of the slave class of worker." In short, owners would pay as little as possible for the workers to continue to survive so they could work. Exploitation of workers by lowering wages, forcing longer hours, and introducing machines devalues human beings and turns them into commodities. Marx wrote in an era with no unions, no government protections for workers, and ample labor, which allowed owners to fire workers and replace them quite easily. Although a wave of revolution swept across Europe in 1848, the Communist Manifesto, published the same year, had little or nothing to do with these uprisings. However, Marx lived to witness what he viewed as one of the most important events for the working class, the Paris Commune of 1871, during which workers and others marginalized in society overthrew the French government in 1871. Marx labeled this takeover as a dictatorship of the proletariat. Yet, after only 2 months in power, the French army crushed the progressive, secular, and social democratic commune and killed 20,000 citizens. Marx's critique of capitalism still lives on today. Modern capitalism and industrial states have changed, often as a direct consequence of Marx's writings. Governments have legalized unions and instituted workplace protections, minimum wages, accident insurance, maximum work hours, and more, all to prevent the anger that Marx and Engels thought was necessary for the workers' revolution that would topple the bourgeoisie. Their call for all working men of all countries to unite for the communist revolution has yet to be realized, largely because capitalists and their governments learned to appease workers while continuing the exploitation of wage, labor, and alienation that Karl Marx brought to our attention. But what about the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, and other communist countries that claim to be Marxist? I'll leave you with these questions. Were these countries agricultural or developed industrial countries when they had their revolutions? How large was their working class? Who led and created the revolution? Was it workers?